great. If all of you became connected to one another and networking with one another, you're all in some capacity in the same shoes because you're probably been either told or you're responsible or you're volunteering or you're voluntold, which is like a new term that I like to use on planning your company events. And I just want to share a little bit about me. It's so great to meet you all. I'm Lee. I'm your host for today. I'm the founder and CEO over at Confetti. I'm one of the world's experts in employee culture and event planning, and specifically virtual team building. And my company, Confetti, has over 8,000 customers. We've worked with companies like Google, Facebook, Shopify, Spotify, Pinterest, Etsy, you name it. I mean, like, there's really we got a lot of the logos that we're very proud of. And maybe some of you in the chat have already worked with us. But Confetti, in the most simple stance, is the easiest way to discover, plan, and book unforgettable virtual and hybrid employee experiences. From hosted games to shippable classes. It's the only platform that takes care of the entire planning process end to end with a happiness policy. And there really is truly something for everyone. We want y'all to just sit back, be a participant and a guest, and just enjoy your time with us. Our platform is intended as a tool to help you build your company culture. And as team building is team building is a piece of that. I want to today give you a high-level overview of all the things that can contribute to your workplace culture and just areas that you can focus on improving it. So I hope today will be valuable to y'all. We're going to be covering the effective hybrid and remote company cultures, do's and don'ts. There's going to be 5 main tips here that we're going to be breaking down. But let's start with a little bit of housekeeping in terms of the agenda. We're going to start things off by just breaking the ice a little bit amongst the 80, now 5 participants that we have part of today's webinar. We're going to talk a little bit about the problem. It's hard to know kind of where to start, what to prioritize, how to maintain workplace culture, and why does it matter? Some relevant stats, supporting studies about the importance of culture, and then what's the solution? So digging into the do's and don'ts, and of course, some Q&A and some freebies that we're going to be giving out. So we'll be sprinkling some polls throughout to see how you're doing. And I encourage you just to be engaging with the chat throughout. If anything resonates with you, I would love to hear it. I'm monitoring it. If any of you have live questions, I'm here to answer it on the spot by monitoring the chat, or you can submit it via the Q&A feature, and I'll review that at the end of the webinar. All right, so everybody get your mouse and clickers ready. We are going to start by taking a poll, and we're going to start off, and Jess is going to help me because I see for some reason my poll feature isn't live. All right, poll number 1. What's the status of your company culture? The options are, we're just starting out, so give me some more tips, please. Second one is, we have a solid foundation, but need improvement in some areas. We have a thriving company culture, but can't wait to learn more. And then question number 2 is, do you have a budget allocated to company culture? We do, not yet. And if so, what is your annual budget? I'm not sure what our budget is. Under $25 per person, 25 to 50, 50 to 100, or $100 plus. And of course, not available. We don't know. Awesome. We're seeing the answers roll in, and we're going to give it a little bit more time. Ooh, we did such a good job. I'm so proud of y'all. We have such high engagement. We're going to end the poll now because pretty much 100% of people answered. Holy moly, guys, this is incredible. All right, so I'm going to share the results just so y'all see that there are other people in your bucket. All right, so poll number 1, what's the status of your company culture? You've got a mix of everything, but 55% of you say, like, we've got a good foundation, but we need some improvement. And then there's some people are like, we're starting out, and folks here that are just absolutely thriving, which is so amazing. In terms of whether you have a budget allocated to company culture, that's we do versus a not yet. So for the people who selected not yet, we have a separate webinar that will be giving a little note to in the chat. But it might be helpful for you to reference that full webinar about how to like ask management, upper management for budget, how to get clarity around budget. And then in terms of what that actual annual budget is, you really see that there's a range here. A good amount of people just aren't really sure what that budget is. And, hey, sometimes it's really as simple as asking HR, is there a budget allocated towards team building and company events? And seeing that there's a good percent, about 20% of people selected that the budget is over $100 per person. And then another 20% that said not available. So very, very cool. Great information here. And I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to go back to our regularly scheduled programming. So I always think it's good to talk over the data of why what we talk about matters. So I have a few statistics and comments here that I just want to share. One of them is through Forbes. So 87% of workers in the United States prioritize organizations that share their values. So important. I think we've all been in a group project of sorts where you're like, oh my gosh, I do not feel the vibes around here. And it's so much better to be in a team dynamic where the vibes are on. I always like to mention, like, when you get like a championship winning team, they say like, hey, what was the reason? And people always say it was because of the chemistry, and that chemistry is a reference to that culture. LinkedIn job postings that mention values such as culture, diversity, and well-being now receive nearly 3 times more views and twice as many applications as they did 2 years ago. So it's really showing that trend that work is not just a place where we clock in to make our money, but it's a place that we want to feel connected to the people around us. And the last one is from Harvard Business Review. Company culture has grown in importance thanks to recent high-profile culture crises, such as those at Uber and Wells Fargo, that intensifies push for DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the continued battle for talent. Culture has become a strategic priority with impact on the bottom line. It can't just be delegated and compartmentalized anymore. Awesome. So what's the problem we're trying to approach here? Why do companies struggle with building a great company culture when it's so important? So between figuring out budgets, prioritizing the correct things based on your company needs, getting everybody on board to make a team effort, it's just difficult to know where or how to start the process. And that's what I want to help you with today. Disclaimer that we're not really going to be getting into budgets too much since we did an in-depth webinar on this already. But Jess has sent it in the chat, a whole resource on how to create and get approval and allocate a budget for your team building events. Super, super helpful. Awesome. So let's get into the do's and don'ts. Again, high level overview of how to work on your company culture, make it more effective for hybrid and remote workplace. And feel free to drop comments. We're here to make this engaging for y'all. So I'm going to take a quick sip. I don't know if I need to hydrate myself. Everybody should take sips with me. It would be like almost like a little sober drinking party. All right. Do make it a team effort. So start with a game plan. And being here is just, first of all, a really great place to begin. So kudos on that. If you think it should be a group project in terms of like, your team best, and if you feel like your team wants to get involved, give them opportunities to get involved, but also don't be afraid to make an executive decision either and say, hey, y'all, I want to make this super simple. I've gone ahead and planned a team building for you all, or some kind of experience, an event, send out a calendar invite, request people's active participation. And again, we've all been part of a group project, and it's sometimes hard to see the progress for things when it's delegated too widely. So as the team, ask the team if they want to be involved. And if they do, tell them like they need to be committed. Like we can't just be like, I would love to help, and then be like, but when it comes to it, I'm not going to help. So really make sure, hey, if you guys are going to um, like volunteer and offer to help, let's just really be committed to making sure that we can make it happen and communicate if anything changes with our schedule that makes us not be able to do that, and try to get to decisions quickly. That way you can go back to work. Regardless of whether your team is helping you or not with the planning, just make sure that they know attendance and participation is super important to you. And it does require re-emphasizing these things at pretty much every time. So like, hey, I'm planning something. It's so important for me that you guys are going to participate. So let's figure out a date and time together. And once we have that date and time, let's try to honor that date and time. And then, life happens, people might not show up, but re-emphasizing that, reminding them in follow-ups prior to the event so they can have great participation, and just work out the best days and times of the week in advance. At least 6 to 8 weeks is the preferred time frame that we've run our research from, to know that that's kind of the time frame that people prefer. But everybody's a little bit different, and sometimes people are like, hey, I need 3 months in advance, and some people are like 2 weeks is fine. Awesome. Identify your priorities for company culture and make sure everybody is on the same page. So maybe by understanding that y'all just need to have a little bit of fun and disconnect, and like you don't want to do anything like too professional. You just want to like sit and laugh with everybody. That is a good way to identify the priorities and finding a way to like create a curriculum. And then Tori asked in the chat if there will be a recording that is sent in. Yes, absolutely. There is a recording that is going to be sent to y'all. So if anything pops up and y'all need to hop off or anything, know that you'll get that in there. But this is a really great place to have a discussion with your team. And I want to point out a couple of questions that you can ask them. So one of them is like, how frequently would you like to be offered team building events? How much advance notice do you prefer ahead of scheduling those team building events? Who would you like to get to know better at a team event? So getting them to be like, hey, we don't really get to connect with the department leader, or it would be really nice if the CEO came to one of our events. Whatever those kind of check boxes might be, offer it to the team and try to create, again, a curriculum that's based off of their needs. What kind of experiences would you like to see more of? Maybe it's like health and wellness events, maybe it's like cooking classes. And Jess is going to send in the chat a whole list of questions. We call them our survey questions. And we are happy to also help you put together a custom survey. So Jess is going to drop in the chat as well, just my personal email address. There's 88 people on this call. I would be happy if all 88 of you send me an email. And I want to make sure that y'all are successful. So Lisa, that was brilliant. Personalization. All right, so touch on finding team building events that your team members like based on outside hobbies and interests. So like if you know that one of your team members, for example, is like an amazing chef, you might want to be like, hey, like we want to center this around you, or maybe you want to center it around their company anniversary. There's so many different ways that you can get that engagement. And everybody on your team and every one of you should be utilizing their budgets. And I can say for majority of companies, there is a budget allocated towards team building. It's just not always properly communicated to teams. Awesome. So yeah, we're also gonna share a template, Jessa will, for 5 templates for approaching budget discussions with your team if you feel like you need a little bit more guidance, but I'm going to move on for the sake of time. And we're going to do the don't underestimate the importance of employee wellness. So we're all here working and doing our best, but at the end of the day, our health, our wellness matters the most. And this looks differently from person to person, right? Which is why I believe that it's best to kind of work to create a customized approach, but it needs to be standardized in order for it to be equitable. But you should first start by just reviewing your policies and seeing with your team what they feel like is holding them back from feeling really healthy and happy at work. And there might be some really quick wins, like learning that they might be stressed about a monthly doctor appointment. And you can just give them the freedom to take those and be like, hey, I don't want you to be stressed about, like, it doesn't have to come out of your PTO. I don't want you to be stressed about these doctor's appointments and missing work. Thank you for telling me about it. And then review recruitment and retention strategies. So one big tip, if your company isn't already doing this, is exit interviews. And it's been really enlightening to see. But once people have already kind of left the organization, they finally feel a little bit more empowered to kind of tell the full truth of what's going on. It would be great if people told the full truth prior to that, but we understand that they don't always feel comfortable, or they sometimes don't feel heard. There's a lot of circumstances that can fall through, but reviewing those exit interviews and really understanding, why maybe people left or what didn't work out best for them is really helpful. Appreciation, recognition goes a long way in employee wellness. So one thing that we do at Confetti is we have gratitude channels, and for us, we use Slack. So that gratitude channel is embedded into our Slack. And when somebody gives a shout out to another person within the organization, it could be anybody within the organization. It sends a message out to everybody. And it's so nice to see that, like, one person might give one person a shout out, but then in the comments, there's like, oh my gosh, I'm just making up names. I love Ashley. Ashley, you're the best. And it just like fills people with that recognition and that admiration that people have within the organization. We also like to attach in our gratitude channels it to a company value. So we have 10 different company values, and essentially you can tag the company values that person is essentially reflective of into that gratitude channel. Mian says we do daily shout outs in our stand up. It's always brought up as a positive in our quarterly check-ins. Love that. Hope I pronounced your name wrong, and hopefully you don't hate me if I didn't. Let's see what else we got here. Encourage employee resource groups. So usually this is something that starts to form in bigger companies over 200 employees, but it really is up to you. And what's great about employee resource groups is that they really are able to create a safe space within the organization to find people who are representative of that culture or those interests. And yeah, awesome on that front. Provide opportunities for growth and development. It sounds pretty basic, but just learn what your employees sees as their room for improvement and try to help them put a plan to grow into where they want to be. So a handful of years ago, we made a change in our performance reviews where instead of the managers just reviewing the employees actually largely review themselves in front of the managers, and the managers have an opportunity to chime in and add more context. But what's always been amazing is usually you're able to see that the employees and the managers are on the same page, and the employee has a lot of self-awareness on what needs to change. And then the manager can guide them and say, like, hey, let's work on this together. And it always feels better to kind of say what you're weak at rather than be told what you're weak at. So I'm very big onto that, and through that you can put together a plan for growth and development. Encourage work-life balance. I mean, just if people are having a hard day and it's not a big deal, like tell them to take the rest of the day off. Like, it's those little things. And Jess going to share a blog post about just innovative employee retention strategies that you might want to read and look into after this webinar. And then if you have a health and wellness event stipend, for us, Q4 is very stressful for us. And we give our managers like a stipend to surprise and delight the best performers. And if you can get approvals for things like this, it's just helpful to boost morale and give people an opportunity to say, hey, we know that this time of the year it's a little kooky, and thanks for bearing with all the stress and being such a great team player. Do 360-degree reviews, similarly to what I said, but more led by the employees with feedback from the manager if there are any discrepancies. But 360-degree reviews is employee reviews manager, manager reviews employee, and peers review peers. And we have a rotation in which we do this, but really gives a full circle. And so many companies just do managers to employees, but you really need to understand, what do the employees think about the managers? And there are multiple ways that you can give feedback. It's one-on-ones. It is digital submission through online, kind of surveys, and it can be quick. It doesn't have to be like a 30-minute survey. It can be one question. It can be like, hey guys, just answer. It takes 20 seconds. Please answer. And open-ended questions during team meetings, if it's appropriate, is really great. Just to include people in the brainstorming. Again, it just encourages them to participate. And getting that into like a manager mindset of saying, hey, I'm going to have you talk before I do. Super helpful. All right, let's take a quick poll. I'm running a little bit behind time, but what's your team's current company culture priority? Is it team building / team bonding? Is it diversity, equity, and inclusion? Is it employee wellness? And is it a different one that y'all are going to write in the chat? Awesome. We've got some great participation, and we are almost at 100% participation, which is amazing. Ambriosa says engagement. Ambriosa, if you're willing, how do you define engagement? I would love to hear. We are almost at the finish line. We're going to give it 10 more seconds, and we're going to close the poll. We got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Awesome. I'm going to end the poll. I'm going to share the results. And as you can see, 68% of you said team building. About 21% of you said diversity, equity, and inclusion, with 7% going into employee wellness, and a handful that said a different one. And they're writing a big one is engagement in the chat. So I think that's wonderful. Awesome. And let's go to our next do's. So make a genuine effort to communicate and connect. I always say, like, a lot of these tips are just so basic, but you need like these reminders of like what it is that needs to be done, and then start formulating very, practical reasons on how you can do these things. So one big thing when it comes to at least team building, since that was one of the biggest buckets of what your team is looking to improve, is making bulk plans. And this is also really helpful for a manager. It's very helpful for HR, but trying to plan the year in advance, and this is something that Confetti can help you with, but strategize in the beginning of the year, or quarterly or bi-yearly, whatever it is. Try to make these plans in bulk and work with the different themes of your organization to put something really fun together. And again, something that we can absolutely help you with. We have an incredible planning workshop that we run customers with. And, if you're a customer service company, you probably want to celebrate Customer Service Week. Like, that's probably something that culturally you should do. And we can share with you all the different unique dates. You can also go to our website. There's a whole knowledge hub with all these amazing calendars and resources. But make sure to just work on that communication. Use every opportunity that you're in front of that human being that you're working with, any recurring meetings, to collect feedback and work on that opportunity to connect with them. It is going to be your one-on-one. So we like to, usually allocate the first 5 minutes of a conversation to be like, hey, what you eat for lunch? What did you do this weekend? And really get to know the person. And it's just such a beautiful transformation in terms of like a cultural impact. Do quarterly reviews with those employees. I think one thing that I'm noticing within the workforce is that employees always want to know where do they stand, and making sure that that's regularly communicated in a cadence is just helpful. And do those things also in a town hall by giving shout outs to different employees, giving them an opportunity to share what they're working on across departmental, and communicate the importance of open communication. It really starts with it starts with your words and then follows with your actions, but ask those open-ended questions, get your team's opinions first, make sure they're getting feedback, like that you're getting their feedback, and making sure that they know that their feedback is important to you. Like literally saying like, your feedback's important to me. Tell me what's going on. Like what was good, what was bad, what was ugly, and make sure that they understand your intent, which is often like, hey, I want to make this work. I want to make sure that you're super successful here. So we can only get there if we're doing this together. All right. And then the last one that we have before our final poll and opening up to Q&A is our don't section. So don't be afraid to rely on seasonality for your team building activities. So many people wait until Q4 to do some kind of holiday party together. And I often say you don't want to go on a date with your significant other once a year. You need to do this regularly. So find themes throughout the year. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a planning workshop we can put together for you and your team. My email is earlier in the chat, but just can resend it again in case y'all want to. Just shoot me over an email. I'll connect you with the right folks to put that planning workshop together. And if you're starting to have doubts about what and when, just get started. Put something on the calendar, just do something. It's kind of like, that feeling when you leave the house and you're just so glad that you did something a little bit different with your life. You don't need an excuse or a special theme or a reason to celebrate with your team. Not doing it in a long while is good enough. And yes, we might be biased, but especially if you are remote or hybrid, team building really is a necessity. And you can always work with your teams, with teams like ours, to just create a deeper team building strategies and discuss the cadence and the event types, and make sure that you're constantly adapting to get your team to whatever kind of cultural goals you want it to be. Plan early, and so your team knows what's coming up, and so your employees have something to look forward to. And we're going to wrap it up with a final poll before we end it with a Q&A. So how do you feel about bringing what you learned back to your teams? Do you feel like we're ready to implement these tips and are crushing our company goals? And by the way, this one is going to be a private poll for us. We're going to just use this to ensure that this webinar was helpful. We might need some help. I would love some more resources. Which topic we discussed would you like to learn more in depth? Making company culture a team effort, or improving employee wellness? Really, really grateful for your feedback. It just allows us to be able to better service you. We've got a good amount of participation. We're going to give it 20 more seconds or so. In the meantime, I'm going to read some of the things in the chat that I didn't get an opportunity. Awesome. In the meanwhile, would love it for you all. And I'm just going to take a little note here. To submit your Q&A questions to us in the chat. Perfect. Thank you so much for this feedback. This was fabulous. And yeah, maybe are there any questions that we can answer? Let's see here. Got a couple in the Q&A box. And we're going to do a recap quickly. Okay, just going to start with Q&A first. So one person wrote here, if there was one talking point you'd say was most effective or most important to improve company culture, which one would it be? And I think that's a great question. I think that ultimately the biggest question that the best answer that I would have for something like this is it really just comes to like kind of transparency and like openness of communicating. Like that at the end of the day is what truly builds authentic cultures. But sometimes it takes work to get there. Sometimes you need HR, and I say sometimes, but always it takes work to get there. And you can use HR to help. And I find that team building is one of the mechanisms that break the ice for some kind of stale relationships or cold relationships, because it's a place where you put work aside and you're able to see the person as a human being. You're able to break bread. You're able to laugh with these people. And you're just remembering that we're all just kind of human beings that are on this planet spinning in the middle of nowhere, trying to make it all work. And it hopefully alleviate some of that stress and pressure to take work so seriously and be like, hey, we ran into this like thing and I just wanted to bring it up. All right, we got a couple of questions in here. How would you approach a leader about company culture who's not interested in improving it? The team wants it improved. Ooh, so this is super, super great. I'm gonna it's an anonymous attendee, but thank you for submitting it. I believe I have a whole blog post on this. I have to, it's either in the queue or it's already been launched. But one thing that you can do with that is you can source actual feedback and information from those team members and tell the management and the leadership that this is something that the team wants. It's really something as basic as saying, hey, this has been requested, this has been asked for, and giving your own perspective of why it needs to be improved, coming to a lot of managers and leaders with data, kind of like the ones that we started this webinar with, because a lot of managers want to understand, hey, what is the benefit that we're seeing from something like this? And yeah, as basic as it sounds, get people's like feedback and like present it to them with data, and then give them an opportunity to just be like, hey, what happens if we were to do one? And hey, what budget would you be willing to allocate in order for you to get comfortable with us experimenting with something like this? And at least within Confetti, we have experiences starting at $200. It's like $7 per person. It's like, cheaper than a cup of coffee. So budget really shouldn't be one of the reasons. Next question we have is, where do we find a list of touch points throughout the year? Great question. So we can customize this list of touch points for you through a planning workshop. If you send me an email, connect you with the right team. But another thing, if you go to our website, let me see if I can, no, I can't do it because I'm sharing my screen with the webinar. If you go to our website, on the top bar, there's a knowledge hub. And there's a whole bunch of calendars that are worthwhile exploring there. There's ones that are based on wellness. There's ones that are based on team building. There's ones that are based off of departments. So those are some of the places where you can find a list of touch points. Asking this in the chat too, but any suggestions when there have been a slew of layoffs, specifically 5 and 12 months? I feel like any strides we can make, another layoff has completely ruined it. So layoffs is tough. I think that sometimes the best thing that you can do in a layoff particularly is get really bonded with your immediate team, because those are the people that you're going to spend the most amount of time with. It's going to be much easier to coordinate a cultural event between 5-10 people rather than the hundreds that might exist within your organization. Also just like checking in with people, like just like the little things, like doesn't even have to be a team building event. It could just be like taking some folks within the organization and saying like, hey, we should do like a virtual coffee date or real coffee date if you guys are in person. And I just wanted to check in on you and see how you're doing. How are you holding up? There's been so many changes. What's been your experience? And, give people a listening ear. Hope that's helpful. Happy to take more of that conversation offline if I didn't fully understand you. Any recommendations for a global remote team? We do not have many times that allow everyone to participate. So great question. Global remote teams are challenging. We do have a whole collection on Confetti that's for international teams. Worthwhile to browse through that. It's one that we're also constantly working on improving because we live in a big world, and culture and content looks different for every country. So trying to get that as widely available as possible is important to us. What we see for global remote teams is most times they have a pretty early morning time frame. So like, let's say a 9 a.m. Eastern time that allows people in Europe to participate essentially right in that end of the workday hours, maybe slightly after work. And it is a matter of getting people, if you're sticking to one event, which I'll talk about in a second, if you're sticking to one event, it's a matter of really getting people to kind of buy in the participation. And sometimes what you might do is say, hey, this time zone is slightly, or this event for this, the time for this event is slightly inconvenient for US for this event, but it's slightly more convenient for our APAC. And then you might have it reversed for the next time around. Or something that you can do is actually split the event into 2 different sessions and have one be more convenient to each time zone, which is really what we recommend the most. They're still going to get a shared experience because they're going to go through the same event, just on different times. Another last tip is we have experiences called like Confetti Pub. There's like coffee versions if you don't want it alcohol themed. But it's a very like long event. I say long, it's like about a 2-hour session. It can be customized. Oh, I forgot about that effect. But you actually can join whenever you want within those 2 hours. You can come late, you can leave early, you can come for 15 minutes, you can leave and then come back, like super convenient. And that way you're giving a longer period of time for people to kind of be able to join in and out. And we see that to be super helpful for global remote teams. And then one of the last questions that I'm going to take today is, how do we encourage employees to attend, get excited for events? Great question. And we have a whole webinar on this as well. It's about how to increase employee participation during events. If you want to share with me, I think I'm able to send it to you privately, your email. I can go ahead and send you the recording for that after this webinar. But in the Knowledge Hub, you'll see a webinar section and you can play around and see all the different content that we have available for you. But one big thing is just to create FOMO. Everybody loves a good FOMO sesh. And it's hyping up the event with Easter eggs. So if you're doing a wine tasting, you can do like 7 days of trivia beforehand. You can do little icebreakers, little polls like red, white, sparkling orange, and like, who are you? And then we take a photo of the participants during the event, and it's like sharing that photo, getting people to share their experience on, whether it was positive. It's just people love like to know that like I would say it's not that people like to know when they missed out on a good event. They get bummed out on it, but it does create a level of like, we're the people who experienced that event while everybody else didn't come. And then it's creating a frequent series of experiences to ensure that if you had a really great event, capitalize on that and get people to be like, hey, because this was so successful, because some of you missed out, we're going to schedule another one. And try to get it in a time frame that allows people to be able to sign up and see that maybe the quality of the experiences in the organization are increasing. All right, before we wrap up, I want to share with you a couple of quick things. There's a lot of great things in the chat that I'm not able to get to, but I want to make sure that I get this over to you before our time together ends. One of them is a promo code that you can utilize for first-time buyers on Confetti. Thank you 50, and you'll get $50 off your first booking with Confetti. And for those of you who care, there's a SHRM credit code. We're going to email you with this information as well. So no huge stress on, capturing this immediately. We're also going to be raffling off to win some confetti credits. So we're going to email you if you're a lucky winner of that. And we're also going to follow up with all of the resources that we shared with you today. And please don't be a stranger. We want to build a relationship with you all. We hope to see you in our future webinars. And if you're ever curious about what a confetti event is, we do have monthly free demo series called Hello and Demo. I believe we just had one yesterday or the day before yesterday for Earth Day. And they're just really fun way to meet new people alongside get to experience our events hands-on, meet our real hosts, see our real content. But don't be a stranger, and big hug, and have a fabulous rest of your day. Thanks, Brenda. Have a good one. Sonia, have a great one. Thank you so much for joining. Bye, Melissa.